Greetings, beautiful soul. It's an honor to co create this space with you, as always, and welcome. Earlier this week, I came into this space and shared a list. It was a list of the lessons that I am here to learn and teach in this lifetime. One of those lessons, if you'll remember, is living with fear. And I want to tell you about a fear that I recently discovered that I live with. Recently, as in this week, discovered that I live with, and uh, how I'm learning to navigate. So, in order to do that, I need to tell you a story. So, I guess this is another one of these story time sessions we're going to have. So, sit back and relax. Uh, as you know, I live with a visible disability, particularly spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy. And as a result, when I turned 18 and I became an adult in the eyes of the United States law and government, I became eligible for a slew of support services that um, the uh, government, state, and federal had to offer. Now, in order to, one of the conditions of being eligible for those services, for those support services as an adult, uh, was that I was not allowed to have any sort of accumulation of assets uh, that could be, you know, bought or sold. So only allowed to have a certain amount of money in the bank account. Uh, Anything of value had to be declared, whether it's physical property or so forth and so on. And this is the way that the government and the state agencies that provided the services that I required as an adult, uh, many of which included um, assistance with activities of daily living, personal care attendance, so forth and so on. Um, so that's how the government set it up. One is eligible for all of these assistance programs, but having an earning income um, or over a certain amount of income um, made one ineligible for these for assistance, financial and otherwise assistance with these services. Now, the idea behind the system is that um, disabled people uh, go, get the assistance that they need, for example, to go to university, to get a degree, to become gainfully employed, right? And then turn around and become gainfully employed and contribute back into the system and no longer need the assistance that the government assistance that they had up until a certain point, and then pay back into the system and so forth and so on. The reality, though, is that many disabled individuals, uh, myself included, um, do go to school and take advantage of all these things, and still have a very hard time getting work, becoming gainfully employed to such a degree, and earning enough money to be able to support themselves in the way that they require. Uh, Living with a disability all over the world, in the United States included, is very, very expensive. Um, and so there are people with disabilities who do earn money, um, myself and my wife included, to a certain degree. However, uh, it much of the time and much of that income is insufficient to pay for the services that we require out of pocket, and so we uh, continue to require and take advantage of many of the services that are available to us, for which we are extraordinarily grateful. However, as I mentioned, these services oftentimes are contingent upon uh, capping, for example, the amount of income that we're allowed to earn on a weekly, monthly basis, and so forth. And so the way it's set up is that you have the situation where, yes, you can earn money, but the moment you earn a cent over that uh, predetermined by the government amount of money, one no longer becomes eligible for assistance and all these services that were once provided for with the assistance of all these government programs now fall to the disabled individual to pay for out of pocket. And as I say, doing that uh, requires uh, a lot of money. It's very expensive to live in general, but as a disabled individual, even more so. And so, what the dynamic that this creates is, or the feeling that this creates, and this came to me again earlier this week, was that there is what for me, up until very recently, as in this week, was an unconscious fear of making money. Because if I and my wife, make too much money, um, living in the subsidized housing, for example, in which we live, getting the services in which we are now entitled to, um, no longer becomes possible, and or we have to somehow find a way to pay for them out of our own pocket, which would be wonderful. Uh, but my concern is, my biggest fear is that, and the goal, just so people understand, is indeed to, you know, become completely independent of all government assistance. The concern for myself and so many other disabled individuals is, however, that we won't be able to, for various reasons, accessibility being one of them, and other reasons, to consistently make the money required uh, to to uh, procure the services that we need. And so there is this concern that the moment we earn too much money, in many, many ways, our survival as disabled individuals is threatened. And, you know, if you earn too little money, um, making one eligible for these services, then in that sense, in that way, the survival is threatened in the other direction. And so what this creates is essentially a fear, uh, many, many fears around the having and the generation of income. And so, uh, as I say, this all came to me earlier this week And I realized that, whether it was a fear of scarcity, not having enough money, or whether it was a fear of making money and then making too much money over the acceptable limits of government assistance, there there was a fear around money, and I never quite realized how intense and how all-encompassing that fear of making money is. Now, this is and how survival based that fear actually is. So I went back to my human design chart and I looked, and I remembered, of course, that the spleen is the center of all existential fears. There are other, and there are several gates in the spleen that have to do with money and survival, as there are uh, several gates throughout the human design chart that have to do with money and survival. And I've been sitting with meditating uh, around these themes and contemplating and using my own human design chart as a tool to navigate these fears and these concerns. Um, Also, the nervous system regulation techniques that uh, I've been collecting over the years, and so, but simply being conscious of this fear that I have around making money has been, um, I wouldn't say liberating, but it's I feel like it's gotten me. I've taken a significant step. Awareness is a huge step toward now being able to navigate it, to be aware of it, to face what it is when it comes up, uh, this fear of making money, and to hopefully navigate it more skillfully. And if this is a fear that you find yourself experiencing and with which you have trouble navigating, and if you're curious about uh, which gates in the human design chart have to do with money and survival themes around that. Um, and if you're curious to see how these uh, gates um, affect your own human design chart, I encourage you to reach out, um, especially those of you who are disabled and might be going through similar experiences, right? The fears around having either too much or too little money, right? Um, and if this is something uh, that resonates with you, and if you're interested in learning more about and exploring more, I invite you to reach out to me, um, and I would be honored to explore these themes uh, through the human design chart along with you. So, um, in the meantime, I wanted to thank you all for uh, being with me, uh, holding this all with me and holding it together. And until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. And remember, the force is and will be with you always.